welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, the only show on Indian television where you, the MSME, get center stage. This is ET Now's special daily initiative to give MSMEs and entrepreneurs the opportunity to be front and center on every industry and area that matters to you. Tonight on Voice What presents Super Achievers Making New India, I'm in conversation with Shahzay, and on the other side of a short break, we'll bring your conversation with Office.
While India's digital gifting market is growing at a fast pace, one gifting brand is carving a niche through its old-school retail stores. Shahzay, a premium lifestyle brand, makes a statement with its unique and dazzling gifting collections. From home decor and religious idols to statement jewelry, perfumes and wristwatches, Shahzay boasts of having something for everyone. Shahzay was founded by Samrat Zaveri in 2001. Its journey started with a small standalone store in a South Mumbai neighborhood. Shahzay now marks a pan-India presence through its 20 standalone stores. Every product from Shahzay is designed and crafted for connoisseurs. The gleam and shine of these striking pieces are a reflection of its customers' high street lifestyle.
Let me start by talking to you about the brand. Just give our viewers a sense really of the brand, of the journey that you've seen, of the kind of growth that you've seen over the last 15, 16, 17 years.
Shahzay began as a silverware collection way back in 2001, and within 3 to 4 years, we realized that we've sort of reached the peak of that business. The silver business itself started transforming or shrinking to some extent. But nevertheless, we felt that we've reached a stage where there is a lot of brand recognition, and it was always my dream to build a brand. And that's where the real journey began. And today, Shahzay deals in 10 plus categories. We have 20 odd showrooms all over India, and we're growing more aggressively than any other brand today in India.
Okay, so what's fueling that growth? What is your USP? You're saying we're growing more aggressively than brands which are in the similar space. India's opening up, e-commerce is opening up. I will come to e-commerce in just a bit, but what do you think is helping you grow over your peers?
So I think there are a couple of beliefs that we have very strongly about the Indian consumer. The Indian consumer is extremely aspirational. Unlike consumers in many other parts of the world, the Indian consumer is very self-expressive, and they express themselves through their accessories, through what they wear, etc. And we see that this is an opportunity to cater to that unending need to express themselves. So that is one leg on which the brand is standing. The other thing is that we believe that the future belongs to businesses with very strong intellectual property. And that is one thing that we constantly build in our business, and that is design. We have tie-ups with some of the biggest design houses in the UK. We have design studios working globally for us, including our own design studio in-house.
You're talking about growth in the number of offline stores. My question to you really is about at a time when most retail brands seem to be expanding online, whether it's going to be a question of online versus offline. A lot of experts tell us that omni-channel approach is the best approach to have in the retail space. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I kind of agree completely with the omni-channel approach. Our objective is to build a brand, and when you're building a brand, you have to reach out to the consumer. Therefore, whether it's the internet or an offline store, these are mediums to reach out, and tomorrow it could be something else. So we will continue to be a part of any medium that is available to us to reach out and be relevant to our consumer.
You're talking about growth in the number of offline stores. My question to you really is about at a time when most retail brands seem to be expanding online, whether it's going to be a question of online versus offline. A lot of experts tell us that omni-channel approach is the best approach to have in the retail space. Your thoughts on that?
I think this logic doesn't just apply to Indian consumers. Globally, people need to touch and feel products. Human beings are going to want to go out for experiences. And that's more relevant in India, though. People, our retail story in India is still at a very nascent stage. People want to experience going out and shopping. Yes, online business is going to grow, but I don't think that's going to take away from any offline business.
Okay, you said something very interesting earlier about IP. No one talks enough, or no one talks about IP when it comes to design, when it comes to the retail industry in India. Why do you think that's happening? Through our show, if you can talk to our viewers about perhaps why you felt it was necessary to have your own IP for your products in-house.
So you got to get one thing very clear in your mind when you're building a business today. As I said earlier, the future belongs to businesses with strong intellectual property. It could be a process, a design, a brand, or whatever it is. And that's because you're living with a very, very well-informed consumer with superlative technology. So there's no way that an arbitrage play is going to get you ahead with the consumer for the long term. So if you're building a business for the long term, it's very important that you have a strong distinguishing point with your business. And in our case, it's our design and our brand.
Everyone talks about the play of Bharat versus India for any brand or any service in India. You're someone that largely looks at the niche market. You have curated products and looking at a niche market. Does Tier 2 and Tier 3 then possibly have any role to play in the kind of products that you have? Would you look at that as a market? How big of a market perhaps will that be for you?
Currently, we are catering to the Tier 1 cities only, the big metros, and we continue to grow there because I think there is a lot of opportunity there itself for us to kind of capture in the next few years. The Tier 2 and Tier 3 story for India, as far as our business is concerned, may be a few years away. I'd be very happy if that happens sooner than later. And I'm not saying that there's no money in those markets. There is a lot of money available. There are many big spenders. But I think Shahzee is a brand where there's some amount of exposure to a certain different lifestyle is kind of important, and that's going to take some time in the Tier 2 and 3 cities to come around. Okay,
so but when you do look at these markets, would you perhaps have to look at a different pricing strategy? Would you perhaps have to look at different designs? What's it that's it's going to take for you as a brand to be able to click in these markets?
I think since we're building a brand, we're talking so much about intellectual property and design and the design language and brand philosophy. I don't think we're going to be able to create a special line or special pricing for these markets. I think we'll have to find that consumer who's ready for our brand and positioning.
Okay, the government is putting a lot of impetus when it comes to skilling. With the Skill India program, for instance. For a brand like yours, especially where there's touch and feel, where people are coming into stores, is it important that you have people, your employees, who understand the ethos of the company, how you're training them to ensure that any customer who walks into the store has a great experience, walks away being happy? How do you do that?
Yeah, so that's been one of the challenges over the years, but I think we've been able to overcome that because we spend and invest a lot of time on training our people, and it begins with a lot of training that I give personally to the team that's actually dealing with the consumers, who are our ambassadors, and now we have been able to successfully form a culture in the company where they are able to deliver the true story of the brand.
Okay, now how do you do that? I just want to look at the big picture. For small businesses that are perhaps watching this interview and are saying that yes, we need to train our manpower, but we don't necessarily maybe have the funding to be able to do so, but understand the importance of training people, especially in the retail business. How do you do that? Is it necessary that companies on their own, at their own end, are necessarily undertaking this training? Is there any way that perhaps the industry can come together to ensure there's a pool of talent which is available for businesses?
Yeah, I think all three options are possible. I think it would be great if you can outsource these things, but it's not the same as the entrepreneur himself communicating this to the team, which kind of drives a direct message of the philosophy, of the belief, of the vision of the business. Yes, the industry can come together and create an infrastructure where this kind of training is possible.
For a lot of the businesses that watch our show, say they understand the importance of building a brand, but they don't necessarily know what it takes to build a brand. Your advice to them, maybe one or two things that they have to keep in mind when it comes to building a brand and sustaining it.
I think one of the most important things that you need to build a brand is a very strong vision of what you want to build, what you want your brand to be. You have to make your brand very, very consistent. It's kind of a relationship which needs to stay consistent with the consumer. The other thing is, yes, of course, you need funding, you need capital to build a brand because you have to sustain sustain your journey to build a brand. And lastly, I think communication is very, very, very critical. How you bring out the voice of your brand is going to determine your future.
Absolutely. All right, you said funding. I want to pick up on that. Most entrepreneurs tell us that their biggest challenge, of course, is raising funds. For a business like yours, which is in a very niche segment, has it been difficult raising funds? And maybe based on your experience, what would you like to tell our viewers about fundraising?
Currently, we are funding this business internally. We have no immediate plans of raising money, but I think you have to be ready for it because it gives you a lot of firepower.
Sure. My last question to you. If you're looking at the domestic retail market over the next, say, 4 or 5 years, what do you think is going to be the biggest game changer and how perhaps are you preparing for it at Shahzi?
I think the biggest game changer, there might be many, but one of the major game changers is going to be the introduction of technology in the buying experience for the consumer. So there are so many opportunities there. The consumer is spoiled for choice. The consumer needs an experience. This consumer wants to be engaged. So one has to be really be able to get into the consumer's mind to see how to keep them engaged, especially the millennials.
You're someone who looks not just at the domestic market but also at international markets. And my question to you really is how you understand the tastes and preferences of your international clients and how and what you think your USP really is when it comes to being able to cater to those needs.
So my understanding of the world today is like it's become a boundaryless world. Our consumers are global citizens. Our brand also we have positioned in a way that it's completely rootless. There is no Indianness to it, nor does it belong to any particular origin or country. It's a very international positioned brand, and yes, that's how we're preparing to take this international at some point.
So you're a brand that looks not just at, of course, the domestic market, but you're also supplying to international markets. What perhaps in your DNA or your USP is helping you understand the taste, the preferences of international consumers and being able then to meet those tastes and preferences?
So first of all, our brand and our products are curated globally. If you have noticed, our brand doesn't have a lot of Indianness in it. We are trying to cater to a global citizen, and because I believe that the consumer is not interested in where you come from, rather they're more interested in what you mean to them at that moment. And that's how we're preparing this brand in a way that it can go international.
Time for a break. On the other side, I'm in conversation with the founder of Office. Just stay tuned. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, and tonight on the show I'm in conversation with Amit Ramani. He's the founder and CEO of Office. I spoke to him about how the co-working space in India is changing and what they're doing to tap into that growth. Take a listen. Thank you so much, Amit, for taking the time out to speak with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow. I want to start by just talking very briefly about Office. It's about 2.5 years old. Sure. Just talk to us about the journey.
So we started the Office business about 2.5 years ago, and the focus was on 3 things, right? One was flexibility. So bring people the option to take the seat or a cabin or a meeting space from an hour to whatever time they required. if they wanted 1 seat or they wanted 500 seats, so give them that flexibility. Give them accessibility. So we wanted to, at the start of the journey, we wanted to provide a center within a 7 to 10 minute driving radius across 7 metro cities in India, and we are very close to that mission right now. Right? And the third was, and most importantly, was transparency. So we provided a technology platform that allowed people to book on the go. So I mean, that's kind of the office journey started. And when we started, the focus, as when we realized, was that there were co-working players that were primarily focused on the startup ecosystem. There were business centers that were focused on the corporate ecosystem. So we said, but there's a SME sector which is completely underserviced, right? So we said, why don't we provide something that resonates with all three categories of startups, SMEs, and corporates? And that's where the office journey started. And we wanted to provide quality workspace for all the three sectors and be able to provide them from a flexible, accessible, and a transparent basis.
That's very interesting. So, like you said, initially co-working spaces started because of the advent of startups, but you're saying that you're seeing more interest now coming in from SMEs. Talk to our viewers, what perhaps is the percentage of revenues that you're seeing from SMEs and MSMEs, and what are the specific benefits an MSME can see from working in a space like this?
So about 50% of our business comes from SME and MSME sector, right? So that's a large portion of our business. The reason that they look at this as a solution, because that market was completely underserviced. The large corporates were serviced by grade A quality tier 1 developers. The startups were serviced by the co-working players, right? But the MSMEs were left to the galas and the Laldora spaces. So we came in as a solution where they could take 1 seat to 50 seats. They could get it where and when they wanted in a micro market, and give them complete flexibility to come in and go as they please. So I think those are the reasons that the SME sector really took on.
All right. So you're saying that there is definitely benefit for MSMEs because the cost is going to come down. Just sort of like a thumb rule in terms of what perhaps could be the cost savings MSMEs can see.
So up to 200 seats, right, we would see about a 25% saving for MSME, and it comes from a simple fact that when you do your own space, you have to provide all the additional amenities, which in our kind of a scenario are shared, like a common activity-based setting to the infrastructure, to the services, etc. Second, they have to build growth for a 5 or 6 year period till they're logged in day one, right? Which we give them flexibility. If you need 30 seats today, you take 30. If you need to expand additionally in the future, you can do that, right? Second. Third, obviously, they have to put in their own capital. So we convert that capital into an operating environment for them.
Okay, so essentially it's an asset-light model, which also a lot of our experts advise MSMEs, at least in your initial years of growth, do look at such an asset-light model. My next question to you is, now the government, of course, is really going to go about Startup India, Digital India, is encouraging startups in India. A business model like yours, what perhaps are some of the synergies that you could see with the government?
So we would love to be the workplace infrastructure provider for many of the initiatives that the government is taking, because the government, in addition to the space, is also providing financial support. They're also providing mentorship, right, which we don't have much expertise in, but we would love to partner with the government to provide the physical asset or the workplace as part of their programs.
I want to talk about essentially the large base of our MSMEs and SMEs who are based outside of the metros. Sure. My question to you is, for any model in India to be successful, no matter what industry you're in, you have to look beyond just the metros. Sure. Are you looking at tier 2, tier 3? So what are the opportunities there?
Sure. So Sunanda, we are clearly looking at tier 2 cities. We have expanded very well under the tier 1 cities. All 7 metros we have coverage. Tier 2 cities, we are looking at Chandigarh, Jaipur, Bhubaneswar, Indore, Ahmedabad, etc. as our expansion plans into those cities for 2018. 2 things are happening. One, those markets are underserviced, right? So a shared workspace or a business center kind of environment is not available. But if you look at the expansion, the opportunity today looks at tier 2 and tier 3 cities, because they give you in the market not only for the tier city, those cities, but also to the rural markets as access, right? Clearly, the providers or the current tenants that we have are also looking to expand into those cities, right? So for example, Vodafone is a customer of ours. They are looking at tier 2 and 3 cities with us as well. So both for our current customer base and the base that exists in those tier 2, 3 cities, we feel there's a huge market there.
All right, as I'm ending this conversation, Amit, you were talking about looking at tier 2, etc. But anything else which is on the table that you can talk about in the next maybe year? What is the industry looking like? How much of that perhaps are you looking to tap?
So Sunanda, one part which will surely happen is consolidation. Second, I think the big boys will emerge, right? There will be a few dominant players that will emerge in 2018, which will continue the journey, because what's happened, interestingly enough, is that this has become one of the alternatives, right? So earlier when people were looking for workspace, they would look at a warm shell space, or they would look at a fully fitted out space. Now co-working or shared workspace has become another solution. So SMEs and corporates will clearly adopt this as we go forward. And the third thing, which I believe will surely happen, is that the ability for the larger players to expand faster will become much more bigger. I mean, the opportunity will become much bigger. We at Office are looking to obviously expand our capacity to double. So we will go from 50 to about 100 centers this year. We also will go into tier 2 cities. So we will go from 9 cities today to about 16 cities in the future, in this year. And we will obviously want to continue to maintain a dominant position that we have today by being the largest shared workspace player in the country.
All right. Wish you all the very best for that.
Thank
Amit.
you, Sunanda.
Thanks for the time today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
That's our show tonight. If you have any questions for us, do remember you can always write to us at leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com. That's our email ID. If you want to reach us on social media, tweet at me personally at Sunanda_J or LOT_ET now, which is our official Twitter handle. You can also leave your comments for us on our Facebook page, Leaders of Tomorrow on ET Now. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good night.